Joining me now is Shahid Buttar. He is running against Nancy Pelosi. He's primarying her in her district, which is very interesting. He's a fascinating guy. He is a democratic socialist, a civil libertarian, hip hop and electronica MC. He was the executive director of the Bill of Rights Defense Committee, the co-director of the Rule of Law Institute, and my favorite part, teaching assistant in constitutional law for Professor Larry Lessig. So you already had me on Lessig. Shahid, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you, Cenk. Thanks so much for having me on.
No problem. Okay, so first of all, for the uninitiated, why does Nancy Pelosi need to be primaried?
Nancy Pelosi is a Democratic Speaker of the House who, for better or worse, advances Republican policies, from supporting the president's foreign policy from Venezuela to Palestine, to supporting Republican fiscal austerity rules, to insulating our criminal president from executive accountability in the form of impeachment. I think it is unfortunately unacceptable for this city, San Francisco, the country's most progressive city, to be represented by a relative centrist in Congress, and I'm eager to fix that.
So let's talk about foreign policy for a second, because that doesn't get enough attention. What do you mean she supports Trump in Venezuela?
You know, there's a whole series of theaters around the world in which the corporate wing of the Democratic Party unfortunately supports the serial interventions of the military-industrial complex. And we see nominal tension between our criminal president and the military-industrial complex. I don't have a great deal of faith that it will persist. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, no, you were breaking up, and I was positive that it was the establishment doing it. Sorry, keep going, brother.
Yeah, we see Democrats, unfortunately, placing corporate resource extraction and placing militarism above human rights and above, frankly, a sane and peaceful and just foreign policy, informed, for instance, by the warning of President Eisenhower. I've been very inspired by the warning that he offered in 1961 on national television as an immigrant Muslim constitutional lawyer. His warnings about the threat that the military-industrial complex would pose, not just in the form of wars for profit abroad, but in the form of a domestic civil liberties crisis that we are now feel very alarmed by the constitutional rights, and that's why I'm running, to help defend them in the face of bipartisan opposition.
How about Palestine? You also mentioned that. So a lot of Democrats, in my experience, the voters really have no idea what their representatives actually stand for. They assume that their representatives are as progressive as they are. What's your actual point of view about Palestine?
Yeah, at the end of the day, Palestine is a perfect example of a settler colonial state supported by U.S. military aid that unfortunately undermines human rights recognized around the world. And these are human rights, incidentally, that we fought a world war to establish in the first place. And so the reason I'm committed to human rights abroad is not because of the particular context in which those rights emerge, but also because our own government, for better or worse, repeatedly, since the end of the Second World War, has found itself on the wrong side of human rights. That's been true everywhere from Palestine. I fear that it might prove true again in Iran, where sabers are rattling today. It's been true across a litany of interventions that we've executed south, particularly in Latin America, Vietnam, of course, and Laos and Cambodia become very hard to overlook. But I've been trained by history to view very skeptically the foreign interventions of the Pentagon and its various corporate beneficiaries.
No, I think they worked out great over the last couple of decades. One disaster after another. Corporate media learns nothing from it. I love that moment when Bernie Sanders corrected Margaret Brennan on CNN, said there is no such thing as a limited strike that's bombing another country and starting a war. Talk to us about your plan for how to defeat her. I mean, first of all, she would say that you're up against a master legislator. So boy, you're in trouble. But in reality, of course, she has enormous name recognition, and she's the Speaker of the House. So how are you going to beat her?
Yeah, she has both enormous name recognition and effectively limitless pockets, right? She is the most prolific fundraiser in the House of Representatives. She's arguably the most powerful politician in the country. And the way I'm going to beat her simply is by representing the interests of her district. Her constituents, the people I look forward to representing in Congress after 2020, should I be so fortunate as to win the general election in November 2020, their views are certainly much closer to mine than they are to the speaker's. I think San Francisco is committed to, for instance, executive accountability. We're committed to climate justice. We're committed to universal health care and an expansive vision of human rights opposed in context after context, unfortunately, by the corporate Speaker of the House. And the fact that Pelosi, frankly, repeatedly gives our criminal president the comfort of not having to face impeachment, the comfort of having Democratic support, for instance, on fiscal austerity rules, the complicity of the corporate wing of the Democratic Party with our criminal president creates a lot of opportunities that, for better or worse, Speaker Pelosi is doing the job for us of demonstrating why San Francisco needs a new, fresh voice, proudly aligned with our city's visionary values in Congress.
Well, good news for you, Shahid. I think you're right about that, because I was on San Francisco radio earlier this morning on KGO on Mark Thompson's show, and I started speaking out against Nancy Pelosi. And normally, especially in San Francisco, there would be blowback to that, but almost all the callers agreed. I don't think she realizes how much she's pissed people off by protecting Donald Trump and insisting that he not be impeached. I mean, I don't know that you're going to get a better case than the person you're running against being, in a sense, quite literally Donald Trump's biggest protector.
I could not agree with you more. You're right, certainly, that San Francisco is over Pelosi. I think you might be right also that she doesn't realize it. At the end of the day, my job is to make sure that San Franciscans know that we have an alternative, that we have an alternative that will back Medicare for all, that we have an alternative that will back the Green New Deal, that we have an alternative who 10 years before Speaker Pelosi showed up to support the rights of her LGBT constituents, I, as a cis hetero Muslim lawyer, was waging battles in state courts in New York, trying to establish the right of consenting adults to marry a partner of their choice. I've fought for issues in the progressive side of the equation long before they were popular. I've helped to make seemingly impossible policy options real, marriage equality among them. I fought for campaign finance reform.
So we're having a little issue with the connection there, but okay, we're back. Okay, so Shahid, we lost you for a second, but we're back now. You know, I want to pick up on your point about gay marriage. It drives me crazy when these establishment Democrats want to get credit for supporting gay marriage in 2014, 2015, 2013, 2017. You were in court back in 2004 fighting for it, but a lot of us were for gay marriage way before that. I think Bernie Sanders was for it 1970s or 80s or something along these lines. And then, so that partly actually leads me to the question about corporate media, because of course that's not how it's portrayed. It's Joe Biden and Obama and Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi are portrayed as American heroes for standing up for gay people a couple of decades too late. So the question is, how do you get past that corporate media who has that kind of disdain and has alternative facts that they use against progressives and in favor of establishment people like Pelosi?
It's a great question. And ultimately, our route to victory includes both an air war component, and I'll get to that in a second. But the real way we're going to win the sea is with the ground game and the ground war. We have volunteers all over the city who are covering ground at live events, getting signs up in stores from one side of the city to the other. And we still have 9 months left before the primary and over a year left before the general. Our presence is already being projected across the entire city of San Francisco. That plus the opportunity to appear on programs like your own, media sources that are not co-opted and owned and limited by corporate rule. The combination of your kinds of programs, the various social media platforms that are available today, and the ground outreach. That's going to be the way that we're going to capture this seat.
All right, well, one last question. Again, I think that a lot of people, partly because of the corporate media, tend to think that the Pelosi's of the world are way more progressive than they actually are. So how do you know she's not for Medicare for all?
Well, so she's opposed it pretty consistently. In 2009, she helped undermine the proposed public option at one phase, while, to her credit, helping usher the public option through the House before that. Her aides have been publicly reported on Capitol Hill in this session of Congress, reassuring particularly corporate executives at pharmaceutical and health insurance companies that they have nothing to fear in the form of Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All bill, which I support. And frankly, Nancy Pelosi has said in no uncertain terms on national media that she is very committed to conventional corporate capitalism and the distribution of even human needs according to the market. And I'm much more eager to see a right to medicine, a right to food, a right to shelter established as human rights within the United States. And that's ultimately the project before our generation, and I'm here for it.
All right, if it sounds like I'm not overly supportive of Nancy Pelosi, that's because I'm not overly supportive of Nancy Pelosi. I believe in progressives. All right, everybody, the website is shahidforchange.us, and you gotta volunteer and donate because if you're not taking big corporate money, the only way to win is that ground game, as Shahid was referring to. So get involved, small dollar donations, volunteers. It has worked in the past, obviously famously so for AOC, and you guys saw that happen with your own eyes here on the Young Turks and so many other candidates. So nothing is impossible. I've been saying all along, wait till you see 2020. Well, here we are. Shahid, thank you for joining us, and thank you for fighting for progressives. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Cenk. It's great to be with you.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below, and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.